I'm 72. If you ignore these 3 words of Jesus, you may regret it forever. 72 years. That's how long I've walked on this earth. And in those 7 decades of living, of making mistakes, of losing people I loved, of standing at crossroads I didn't understand at the time, I have come back to one thing, again and again, with a certainty that no argument can shake. 3 words. 3 words that Jesus spoke. 3 words so short, so simple, that millions of people pass right over them without a second glance. 3 words that don't sound dramatic. They don't sound like a prophecy or a miracle or a thunderous command from heaven. But I'm telling you now, from the weight of 72 years of living, that these 3 words may be the most consequential words ever spoken in human history. And if you ignore them, you may carry a regret so deep it follows you into eternity. Stay with me until the very end, because what you are about to understand changes everything. The words everyone hears, but nobody stops to feel. Here is what's strange about growing old. When you are young, you hear things. You absorb information, you nod, you file it away. You think you understand. But there is a difference between hearing something and truly receiving it into the marrow of your bones. I heard these 3 words of Jesus when I was a child sitting in a wooden pew beside my grandmother. I heard them again as a young man when I thought I had my whole life stretched out ahead of me like an open highway. I heard them in my 40s when I was so consumed with building something, acquiring something, proving something, that the words barely grazed me as they passed. And then one morning, somewhere in my 60s, in the silence of an ordinary day, those same 3 words hit me with a force I simply cannot describe. Not because they had changed. They hadn't changed at all. They are the same words spoken 2,000 years ago on a hillside, recorded by witnesses, preserved across centuries, translated into thousands of languages. The words themselves are identical, but something in me had finally become still enough to truly hear them. And that is what I want to give you today. Not just information, not just a Bible lesson. I want you to feel the weight of what Jesus actually meant. Because if you walk away from this understanding the way most people do, distracted, half listening, nodding and moving on, you may one day arrive at the end of your own road and realize you missed the one thing that mattered most. The setting that changes everything. Before we arrive at the words themselves, we need to understand where they were spoken, because context is everything. These weren't casual words tossed into a crowd. They weren't a passing comment between friends. They were spoken in one of the most intimate, urgent, and charged moments in all of recorded history. It was the night before everything fell apart. Jesus was seated at a table with the people who had walked closest to him for 3 years. Men who had left their professions, their families, their ordinary lives, to follow someone they believed was sent from God. That night, Jesus knew what was coming. He knew the betrayal was already in motion. He knew that before sunrise, everything these men thought they understood about him would be shattered. And in that moment, in that tension-filled upper room, Jesus leaned forward and spoke with the kind of urgency that only comes when someone knows time is short. He looked at his closest companions and told them plainly that he was going away, that they could not follow him where he was going. Not yet. And immediately the room filled with fear, confusion, a desperation that was almost unbearable. Philip said it out loud. Thomas said it out loud. Their hearts were breaking in real time. And it was right there, into the center of that confusion, into the very heart of human fear and uncertainty, that Jesus answered with 3 words. 3 words that were meant to be the anchor, the foundation, the thing they would hold on to when absolutely everything else was shaken. Those words are found in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, verse 6. The first word, I am the way. The first word of the 3 is a single word, way. I am the way. Now here is what most people do when they hear this. They hear it as a theological statement, a doctrinal claim, something to either accept or debate, and they move past it without ever letting its full weight settle on them. But I want you to think about what the word way actually means in the context of a human life. A way is not an idea. A way is not a feeling. A way is not a philosophy you adopt when it is convenient and set aside when it becomes costly. A way is a path, a direction, a route through territory that you could not navigate on your own. When Jesus said, I am the way, he was not speaking abstractly. He was answering the most desperate question every human heart has ever asked. The question none of us can escape, No matter how successful we become, no matter how many problems we solve or relationships we build or accomplishments we stack up. The question is this: where am I actually going, and how do I get there? Think about how many years of your life you have spent walking paths that promised to lead somewhere meaningful and left you standing in emptiness. The career that consumed a decade, the relationship you poured everything into, the achievement that felt so critical until the moment you reached it and discovered it solved nothing. We are extraordinarily gifted at walking confidently down roads that lead nowhere. Jesus was not offering one option among many. He was saying something far more specific and far more radical. He was saying that every other path, no matter how logical it looks from the outside, no matter how many other people are walking it, leads somewhere other than where your soul is trying to go. At 72, I can tell you something I couldn't see at 30. The paths I chose on my own terms, the directions I charted by ambition or fear or the need for approval, none of them took me where I actually needed to be. They were detours. Some of them were very long detours. Some of them cost me years I cannot recover. The way is not a system. It is not a religion in the institutional sense. It is a person. And that distinction matters more than almost anything else I could tell you today. Because systems can be gamed. Religions can be performed. Institutions can be satisfied with outward compliance, while the inner man remains completely untouched. But a person sees through all of it. A person knows whether you are truly walking with him or simply wearing his name like a badge while heading in a completely different direction. Jesus did not say follow this teaching. He said follow me. He did not say learn these doctrines. He said come after me. He did not say observe these rituals. He said abide in me. The first word is way, and ignoring it means spending your life walking roads that feel purposeful but are slowly, quietly taking you further from everything you were made for. The second word, I am the truth. Now we arrive at the second word, and this is the one that cuts deepest, particularly in a world like ours. Truth. I am the truth. We live in a generation absolutely drowning in information and starving for certainty. Never in human history have we had access to more data, more voices, more perspectives, more opinions. And never, perhaps, have people felt more deeply confused about what is actually real, what actually matters, and what is actually worth building a life upon. Everyone today claims truth. Every ideology, every movement, every school of thought presents itself as the correct framework for understanding reality. And because there are so many competing claims, so many contradicting voices, many people have quietly reached a conclusion that might be the most dangerous conclusion a human being can reach. They have decided that truth itself is relative, that there is no such thing as absolute, foundational, unshakable reality, that each person constructs their own version of what is true and lives according to it. This is not wisdom. This is surrender dressed up as sophistication. When Jesus said, I am the truth, he was making a claim that is either the most arrogant statement in history or the most liberating. There is no comfortable middle ground. He was not saying he had discovered some truth among many truths. He was not saying he had found a truth that worked for him and might work for you as well if it resonated with your personal experience. He was saying that truth itself, the foundation of all reality, the bedrock beneath the shifting sands of every human opinion and cultural moment, is not an abstract principle. It is a living person, and that person is him. Think about what that means practically for a human life. If truth is relative, then nothing you build is truly stable. Your values are preferences. Your convictions are opinions. Your sense of right and wrong is nothing more than a product of your environment and your psychology. And when those things are challenged, when life shakes you at your foundation, you have nothing solid beneath your feet. But if Jesus is truth, if there exists a reality that does not shift, a moral foundation that does not erode, a source of understanding that does not change with the cultural weather, then every single question about how to live, how to love, how to treat people, what to prioritize, what to sacrifice, and what to protect, every one of those questions has an answer that does not depend on which decade you happen to be living in. I have watched the culture around me shift dramatically over 72 years. Things that were considered settled are now contested. Things that were once unthinkable are now celebrated. And things that were once celebrated are now dismissed. But the truth that Jesus embodied, the character, the compassion, the integrity, the sacrifice, the resurrection, that has not moved. not 1 inch. The people I know who are most at peace, most grounded, most genuinely whole, are not the ones who have successfully adapted to every cultural shift. They are the ones who found something that does not move and learned to build their lives on it. Truth is not what the majority believes at any given moment. Truth is what is, and Jesus claimed to be that. Not to know it, not to teach it, to be it. Ignoring this word means spending your life building on foundations that will not hold when the storms of life arrive. And the storms always arrive. I have stood in a few of them, trust me on this. The third word, I am the life. And now we reach the third word, the most personal, the one that reaches into the deepest part of what it means to be a human being. Life. I am the life. Here is the question this word forces on every honest person. What does it mean to actually be alive? Because there is a difference between the biological fact of being alive and the experience of truly living. Anyone who has walked through a long stretch of depression knows this. Anyone who has achieved everything they thought they wanted and still felt hollow understands this. Anyone who has been surrounded by people and still experienced a loneliness so deep it was almost physical, they know. You can breathe and have a heartbeat and still be missing the very thing that makes breathing feel like it means something. Jesus made an extraordinary claim when he said, I am the life. He was not merely promising eternal life in some far-off future sense, though he was certainly including that. He was speaking about the quality, the depth, the fullness of life available right now. He described it elsewhere as life abundant, life in its fullest possible measure. Not life scraped together from whatever circumstances allow, not life dependent on everything going well, not life that is vigorous when things are good and hollow when they aren't. A kind of life that flows from a source that external circumstances cannot reach. I want to be completely honest with you about something. There were years in my life when I had almost everything by any reasonable measure. A career that was working, a family, a home, and I was not truly alive. I was functional, I was managing, I was going through the motions of a life that looked the right shape from the outside. And there have been other years, years of loss, of grief, of uncertainty, of moments when I genuinely did not know how things were going to work out, where I experienced something I can only describe as life, a depth of presence, a sense of meaning that did not depend on the circumstances being favorable, a peace that I did not manufacture and could not explain. The difference between those two seasons was not the circumstances. The difference was whether I was truly connected to the one who said, I am the life. When Jesus spoke these words, he was speaking to people who understood, perhaps better than most of us do, that physical life is fragile, that it ends, that something in the human heart cannot be satisfied by anything this world offers, no matter how good that thing is. He was pointing to himself as the source of something that the grave itself cannot interrupt. That is why the third word carries such weight, because it means that death, the one certainty every human being lives with, is not the final word on what becomes of those who are truly connected to him. The way leads somewhere, the truth holds up, and the life he offers extends beyond the last breath of this body. At 72, this word is not abstract to me. It is not theology for its own sake. I am closer to the end of my time on this earth than I am to the beginning. And there is a particular kind of clarity that comes with that reality. Things you used to care about stop seeming so important. Things you used to dismiss start seeming essential. The life he spoke of? I want it. All of it. Not as a concept, not as a creed, as a reality I walk in every remaining day that I have. Why these words get ignored. So why do so many people hear these words and keep moving? Why do millions of people who have encountered this passage, perhaps dozens or hundreds of times, still live as though Jesus said nothing of any particular consequence? I think there are 3 reasons. The first is familiarity. These words have been repeated so often, in so many contexts, by so many voices, that they have lost their shock. And they are meant to be shocking. The claim Jesus was making is radical. A first-century person hearing these words for the first time would have been stopped cold. We have had 2,000 years to sand down the edges. The second reason is cost, because accepting what these words actually mean is not comfortable. If Jesus is the way, then many of the paths we have chosen need to be examined honestly. If Jesus is the truth, then many of the beliefs we have built our lives on need to be tested against something larger than our own preferences. If Jesus is the life, then the way we have been pursuing meaning and satisfaction needs to fundamentally shift. That is asking a lot, and so quietly, most people choose a version of these words they can live with without being too disrupted. They keep them at a distance, safe, doctrinal, unthreatening. The third reason is the illusion of time. Most people who are 30 or 40 or even 50 believe, somewhere beneath their awareness, that there will always be more time. More time to deal with the deep questions. More time to sit with this seriously. More time to make the choices that actually matter. I used to believe that too. At 72, I can tell you with absolute certainty, there will not always be more time. The runway is shorter than you think. And the one regret I most want to spare you is arriving near the end of your own life and realizing you kept these 3 words at a comfortable arm's length for decades when they were offering you everything you were actually looking for. What receiving these words actually looks like. I want to be practical here, because I've heard enough beautiful sermons in my life that inspired me deeply in the moment and changed nothing about how I actually lived the following week. Receiving the word way looks like making Jesus the actual director of the direction of your life. Not the advisor you consult when things go sideways, the director, the one whose leading you follow even when it doesn't make immediate logical sense, because you have decided that his capacity to see where these roads end is greater than yours. Receiving the word truth looks like grounding your values, your decisions, and your understanding of reality in who he is and what he revealed, not in what is currently popular, or what is easiest, or what earns the most approval from the people around you. It means choosing the uncomfortable truth over the comfortable distortion. And receiving the word life looks like surrender. It looks like releasing your grip on the version of living you have been constructing on your own terms, and opening yourself to something that flows from a source you did not create and cannot control. It looks like trust, real trust, the kind that is tested and holds. None of this is passive. None of this is simply agreeing with a statement. These 3 words, fully received, rearrange a life. They rearrange priorities. They rearrange relationships. They rearrange what you are willing to sacrifice and what you refuse to compromise. And every single person I know who has genuinely allowed that rearrangement to happen will tell you the same thing. It was the best decision they ever made. What I would tell my younger self. If I could sit across from the version of myself at 30, knowing everything I know now, this is what I would say. Stop treating these 3 words like furniture in a room you've memorized. They are not decoration. They are the room itself. The foundation the room is built on, the air inside it. Don't wait until grief strips away the noise. Don't wait until loss forces you into the silence where these words finally have room to land. Don't wait until the runway gets short enough that urgency does the work that wisdom could have done decades earlier. Receive them now. Let them cost you something now. Let them rearrange you now. Because the life that is available to those who truly receive these words is not a smaller life. It is not a constrained, restricted, rule-bound diminishment of everything you wanted. It is the fullest version of yourself, walking the path you were actually made for, standing on a foundation that holds when everything else shakes, drawing from a source of life that no circumstance and no enemy, and ultimately not even death itself, can cut off. That is what 3 words contain. 3 simple, quietly devastating, eternally consequential words. I am the way, the truth, the life. The question that remains. And now, after everything you have heard today, the question is not whether you agree with this message. The question is what you will do with it. Will you let it pass through you the way thousands of sermons and Christian videos and Sunday morning messages have passed through you before, leaving barely a trace? Or will you stop, genuinely stop, and ask yourself honestly whether these 3 words have truly taken root in the actual soil of your everyday life? Because I promise you this, the day will come, for every one of us, when the only thing that matters is whether we walked through this life holding on to the one who called himself the way, the truth, and the life. Every achievement will fade. Every accumulation will be left behind. Every relationship we treasured will eventually be separated from us by time or distance or death. What remains? what you did with these 3 words. Do not carry these days carelessly. We are living in a moment when the things that seemed distant and theoretical are becoming very immediate and very real. The questions about meaning, about eternity, about what is true and what is coming, they are pressing in from every direction. And Jesus answered them. 2,000 years ago, the night before his own death, looking into the eyes of the people who loved him and were about to be shattered, he answered them. 3 words. Everything else flows from them. If this message reached something in you today, share it with someone you love. Leave your thoughts below. Let me know which of these 3 words landed most powerfully in your life, and why. And if you want to go even deeper into the words of Jesus that most people never slow down enough to truly hear, watch the video on your screen right now. Because in these days, perhaps more than any other, understanding is everything. Blessings.